It's hot out there. If that summer heat and the corresponding air conditioning bill are starting to eat into your comic book budget, let's count down 10 budget-friendly comics that you can check off of your list for $50 or less. We've got a little bit of everything in this one, so let's go ahead and get to the books. Kicking off the list is a book from all the way back in March of 1999, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen #1. The creative team for this book consisted of Alan Moore and Kevin O'Neill. It was published under America's Best Comics imprint, which was launched as part of Jim Lee's Wildstorm label while it was still paired with Image. There was some hubbub right out of the gate though when Lee sold Wildstorm off to DC, which put Alan Moore in the position of working for DC, which is something he'd vowed to never do again after a pretty ugly falling out over the rights to the Watchmen. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen brought together a number of well-known Victorian-era characters and set them all in the same universe. Imagine an Avengers team, but with the members consisting of the likes of Captain Nemo, the Invisible Man, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Naturally, when it was revealed that Hollywood was going to take another stab at this property last year, prices jumped. I had conveniently just sold the whole set of 6 books of Volume 1 for $15 on a Whatnot sale, and now issue #1 alone is selling for upwards of $45. Such is life. One of the more anticipated happenings coming to Disney Plus, to me at least, is the return of Netflix's Daredevil, Charlie Cox, and Punisher, Jon Bernthal. And what better way to celebrate the return than with some classic Miller Daredevil featuring the first battle between the two characters. Our #9 book is Daredevil 183. This June 1982 issue of Daredevil features a Frank Miller cover, Miller breakdowns and Klaus Janson pencils on the interior, and a story from Frank Miller and Roger McKenzie. Interestingly enough, the cover notes, again, the Punisher, which is a little odd since this is their first meeting, but it was the 80s and things got a little crazy from time to time, so we'll just let that slide. Daredevil 183 is one of the standout covers of the Miller run for me, as I really like the blue background. I think it really pops. Currently, you can pick up a nice high-grade copy of this one for right around $40. Speeding its way to the #8 spot is the premiere issue of Sonic the Hedgehog's first comic book series with Sonic the Hedgehog 0. Published in February 1993, Sonic 0 is not the first appearance of Sonic, who had previously appeared in an earlier promo comic book released in 1991 to promote the release of the first Sonic the Hedgehog game on the Sega Genesis. That makes Sonic 0 Sonic's first solo title issue, second overall appearance, and along with that, it's the first appearance of Sonic's sidekick, Tails, everyone's favorite twin-tailed fox. Writer Michael Gallagher and artist Scott Shaw handle the creative duties, cover to cover for this issue and all 6 of its stories. For some reason, Archie decided to start this 4-issue miniseries with issue 0. So instead of having issues 1 through 4, we have issues 0 through 3 for this mini-series, which I've personally always had a hard time keeping separate in my mind from the ongoing series, which would start just 2 months after this mini-series wrapped up. In the current market, a high-grade copy of Sonic 0 will run you just under our $50 budget at $45. Our #7 book is the culmination of 4 years of storytelling, and it ends with the death of an original team member. Coming in at #7 is X-Men 137. Published in September 1980, X-Men 137 is the end of the Phoenix story arc that began in the final pages of X-Men 100 when Jean Grey sacrificed herself to save the rest of the X-Men team, only to be reborn in the following issue as the Phoenix. From there, the Dark Phoenix saga started with issue 129, and it concluded here with X-Men 137, with Jean's second death in just a handful of years, but this would prove to be a longer lasting death than the first one. On the creative side, the ABC crew solidified their place in comics history by landing the plane on this long-running and legendary story. If you're not familiar with that acronym, the ABC team consists of Terry Austin on inks, John Byrne on pencils, and Chris Claremont on the scripts. One of the most legendary creative teams in all of comics history. One interesting fact about this issue, you won't find the Comics Code Authority seal on the cover. According to Marvel's Roger Stern, this was actually an oops on Marvel's part, due to them having to add this giant contest banner across the top of the cover where you generally find the CCA seal. Our budget of $50 is exactly what you should expect to pay for a nice copy of this legendary book, which has recently slipped back within that $50 budget. One of the biggest crimes when it comes to Batman comics is that there have been very few decent covers featuring the Scarecrow, especially when it comes to budget-friendly options. Our number 6 book, Batman 296, is one to check out. Published in February 1978, the cover art from Sal Amendola features a giant-sized Scarecrow reaching down to grab a fleeing and generally terrified-looking Dark Knight. The story, which is titled The Sinister Straws of the Scarecrow, was written by David Verne. In my opinion, this issue is a highlight in a pretty fairly uneventful stretch of Batman. Post Neil Adams Batman is pretty easy to skip over until you get to like the Killer Croc issues that begin in Batman 357, aside from a very select few issues, which are mostly cover buys. In the current market, a high-grade copy of Batman 296 should only set you back upwards of $40. Swinging its way to the number 5 spot is Spider-Man Adventures number 8. This issue features the first appearance of Spider-Man's black costume from the animated series. The cover from Aleš Suviak is an homage to the cover of Amazing Spider-Man 300, with Spidey in a familiar pose over the top of the digital cityscape that you'd expect to see from the Spider-Man animated series. Venom and the black costume have a massive following, and I routinely encounter collectors who are trying to put together all of the big symbiote costume issues. Secret Wars 8, ASM 252, Spectacular Spider-Man 90, and Marvel Team Up 141. In addition to some of those other notable issues, such as like ASM 258 and Web of Spider-Man number 1. All great black costume covers. And it's here that I feel like Spider-Man Adventures 8 fits in. It's not one of the big or main books, but it is 100% the book that is flying under the radar of most of these collectors. This July 1995 issue can be picked up for around $40 for a raw high-grade copy. One of the more surprising things I've learned in the last few years is the number of modern Archie comics that have a reasonable amount of value to them. The common element on these issues tends to be swimsuit covers from artists like Dan Parent or Dan DeCarlo, and with our number 4 book, Holly Golightly carries on the tradition with her cover to Sabrina the Teenage Witch number 47. Cover dated for September 2003, the cover art features Sabrina and Salem just chilling on a beach while Sabrina is showing off this giant new witch's hat. The cover story was actually titled The Hat Attack and was scripted by Abby Denson and drawn by cover artist Holly Golightly. The relative scarcity of these issues is often a contributing factor to their increased value, as order quantities were generally in the low to mid 4 figures for a lot of the titles in the Archie line. In the current market, you can expect to pay upwards of $50 for a copy of Sabrina 47, but be sure to check your local discount bins for issues like this and other popular Archie covers, as these books often fly under the radars of sellers because they're not superheroes and generally not in high demand. One of the greatest pairings in all of Marvel Comics is that of Luke Cage and Iron Fist. Our number 3 book, Power Man 48, features the first team-up of these two characters. Published in December 1977, the cover art for this issue was provided by the legendary Gil Kane on the pencils and Joe Sennett on the inks. The interior creative team consisted of John Byrne pencils and a Chris Claremont script, so not bad. In the span of just 7 issues, these two characters would go from meeting for the first time to co-headlining a book and then going into business together as the heroes for hire. As odd as it may seem now, taking Marvel's representatives of 2 of the 70s biggest fads, that being blaxploitation and kung fu, and pairing them up created one of Marvel's greatest buddy teams. Sooner or later, I think that we'll see Luke Cage and Iron Fist make their way into the MCU. We've still got a lot of damage from the Netflix series to forget about between now and then. So until that happens, I don't really expect a lot of upward movement in the values for Power Man and Iron Fist books. But that said, values have come down a lot from their peaks during the Netflix heyday, which makes desirable issues such as Power Man 48, which you can pick up for right at $50 right now, and then also Power Man and Iron Fist 50 and Power Man and Iron Fist 54 affordable in the current market. In 1983, DC had a problem. They were over a year into the second volume of Swamp Thing, and to put it nicely, it was bad. Luckily, they had a promising young English writer coming on board, And in the span of just one issue, he managed to tie up all of the loose and dead ends from the previous 19 issues that preceded our number 2 book, Saga of Swamp Thing number 20. Cover dated for January 1984, Saga of the Swamp Thing 20 was the first issue of Swamp Thing that was written by Alan Moore. Moore would remain on the title until September 1987's issue 64. And with just this single issue, Moore cleared the board of everything that had been set up or left behind previously and gave himself a clean slate to start from with issue number 21. Artist Tom Yeats provided the cover art while Dan Day drew the interior pencils. And if you've never read Swamp Thing, particularly Moore's Swamp Thing, I encourage you to give it a shot. It's an absolutely fantastic read. Currently, a high-grade, raw copy of Saga of the Swamp Thing 20 will run you right at $40. Topping our summer 2023 top 10 comics on a $50 budget list is Avengers 125. This issue has what I think is the coolest Thanos cover there is. Published in July 1974, just about a year and a half after Thanos first appeared in Iron Man 55, the Mad Titan was having quite a month, as he also graced the cover of Captain Marvel 33, which is another contender for the best Thanos cover. And as luck would have it, Avengers 125 is the continuation of the story from Captain Marvel 33. So if you were needing some clarification on reading order, there you go. The cover for Avengers 125 was penciled by Ron Wilson with inks from the late great John Romita, while on the inside, Steve Englehart provided the story with Dave Cockrum doing the finishes over John Buscema breakdowns. That's quite a creative team, and that's about it for this issue. It wraps up the first main Thanos story arc and has a badass cover. For a book that'll only cost you $50 in the current market, that's more substance than you will get with some at the same price point. It's freaking July, everybody. Can you believe it? The 4th is behind us, and to me, once that happens, it seems like the rest of summer just flies by. I'm already in the works for the top 10 on a $20 budget video, and the big summer top 10 is right around the corner after that, and we're just almost back on schedule, so thank you for your continued patience there as I get caught back up. On the physical world side of the business, I'll be setting up at the Spectre Club show in St. Louis on July 30th, and I'm also working offline to get ready for a comic book show I'm hosting here in Columbia, Missouri on August 19th called the Como Comic Book Show. It's the first time there's been anything like this in town in quite some time, and the first time I've ever organized a show, so wish me luck. We have a great selection of vendors from across the area that have signed up, and I'm really looking forward to the event. If you're in the area, the show's going to be free to attend, so I hope you'll check it out. Collect responsibly, and I'll see you in the next video.